So just a quick overview of the things that we're going to talk about today. We'll do a quick overview and timeline of the opportunity itself, who is eligible to apply and submit proposals. There have been some shifts and some changes with this round of funding. So we'll kind of look at what is the same and what have we changed and why. We'll go over eligible activities, how to access and submit an application, the way that the applications will be evaluated, the award process, and then as I mentioned, we'll have a Q&A session and our contact information at the end. So an overview and timeline of the program. So the Kitsap Eviction Prevention Assistance Program, otherwise known as KEPA, has two primary goals with this funding. Our primary goals with it is eviction prevention and equity in our community. To meet those goals, we are seeking buy-in for community organizations to provide KEPA outreach, education, and assistance submitting applications through Kitsap Community Resources, KCR. KCR provides the distribution services of rental assistance and utility assistance. We are anticipating that there will be multiple recipients for this award funding, and the projected amount of funds available is approximately $279,000. The contract terms for this funding opportunity will run July 1st through December 31st of this year, 2022. Next slide, please. As listed in the RFP, this is the overview and timeline. This is our best estimate of the schedule of events. Things do sometimes come up unexpectedly, and so there may be some minor adjustments to the schedule, but our goal in setting this schedule out and having this timeline clearly defined is so that each of our partner organizations have a clear sense of what kind of time frame they can expect, and to ensure that contracts are in place in a timely manner. Next slide, please. Eligible applicants. And so when we look at who is eligible to receive this funding, we use the Washington State Department of Commerce's definition of a buy-in for organization. Buy-in for organizations are operated by and for the community that they serve. Their primary mission and history is serving a specific community, and they are culturally based, directed, and substantially controlled by individuals from the population that they serve. At the core of the programs, the organizations embody the community's central cultural values. These communities may include ethnic and racial minorities, immigrants and refugees, individuals who identify as LGBTQ+, individuals with disabilities or are deaf, Native Americans, and Alaska Natives. Next slide, please. So there are a wide variety of types of organizations which can be eligible for this funding. They may be a nonprofit, a for-profit, or church, or any other type of organization. That said, there are a number of qualifying factors that are absolutely required of applicants. You must have a federal tax identification number, a federal unique entity identifier, must be in good standing with the Washington Secretary of State if applicable. Some specific types of organizations may be exempt from that requirement. And they must be able to, must serve people living in Kitsap County, and they must be able to contract with Kitsap County. And so that is meeting the other requirements that are in place for all county contractors. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this session, some things are the same and some things have changed. So let's talk first about what is the same. Our activity categories are the same. We still have the two categories of education and outreach and application assistance. Another thing that it remains unchanged is that application assistance is going to be based on past performance measures. And we were able to line out this funding so that there is no decrease to the amount provided per application. Next slide, please. And so when we talk about why are we implementing some changes, what we're doing is shifting towards the normal procurement and contracting processes that the county would usually follow. The commencement of COVID-19 required an abbreviation of the usual procurement process, which led to ERAP 1.0 being a very fast and low accountability funding type. With TRAP 1.0, there was a little bit more definition added about proposals. And with TRAP 2.0 first round, we added more clarity to what was required. As you can see, kind of the flow of this funding lines up with the COVID pandemic. Next slide, please. This chart outlines a lot of the differences that occurred as we start shifting back towards normal procurement processes. So as mentioned, ERAP 1.0 is a very fast contracting need, low accountability funding. TRAP 1.0, there were more definitions added to the proposals. In TRAP 2.0, in the last round that we're currently contracted for, additional detail was required in those proposals as we started shifting back to that normal procurement process. And in the second round, we've been able to add back in some more accountability and reporting so that with ERAP 2.0, we can start to move really towards what that normal procurement process looks like. With we'll have limited funding with ERAP 2.0, and the priority will need to be on application assistance. So we're going to have a normal level of accountability and routine reporting. As mentioned before, the award amounts are going to be calculated based on performance. We also anticipate this to move forward with future opportunities with rental assistance programs. They're going to be very limited funding amounts with a priority on application assistance. That level of accountability, barring any future pandemic, unexpected world events. So that normal level accountability, which includes the routine reporting, and future opportunities will also be calculated based on performance. Next slide, please. Okay, so we talked a little bit about what's new and why we're making some changes. So a lot of the changes that we made were based on the feedback that we received from our community partners. Our community partners had expressed that there was a sense that there wasn't a lot of information being provided up front, and there was a need for financial stability for smaller organizations that are providing this very important service. Some of the changes that we're implementing is that there will be a maximum award for the education and outreach activities as we shift that focus of the funding to application assistance. The maximum award amount is $20,000 for education and outreach for the 6-month period. Another addition that we were able to make is that application assistance is now eligible for a bonus of $100 for each eligible confirmed application submitted. We will talk a little bit more about what makes an eligible and confirmed application in a further slide, but the overarching goal in this context is to understand that that's really where our focus is going. The whole purpose of education and outreach activities is to drive applications that are being submitted. We've also provided a lot more clarity about the proposals, the information that's required, as well as the criteria that the county will use in determining awards. And the final change is monthly reporting. The goals with adding monthly reporting, as noted previously, is to move towards normal procurement. We've also determined that this will help reduce conflicting data from different organizations and resolve those discrepancies and concerns more quickly on a monthly basis rather than future and down the road. This will also benefit with transparency with our partner organizations as the information can be shared in KEPA partner meetings and throughout the different organizations that are providing services. And it'll increase the knowledge about the outreach activities that are occurring. We have great information anecdotally about the great work that's happening in the community, and it will be wonderful to be able to capture that in our reporting process. Next slide, please. So eligible activities, as mentioned, they are still going to be the two overarching outreach and education and application assistance. Outreach and education activities are specific activities as a means of advertising the KEPA program. The purpose of outreach and education activities is to encourage that KEPA applications are made through KCR. Eligible outreach activities include holding events, distributing information at existing events or venues, social media campaigns, email distribution, audio, video advertising, and others as outlined in your proposal. The maximum award amount for outreach and education is $20,000. Application assistance activities include helping tenants fill out KEPA applications or to procure required documentation, working with landlords to get paperwork completed, and assisting people to complete and submit KEPA applications to KCR. Next slide, please. With the change that we're the change that we're going through with the application assistance, it can feel a little complicated at first, and I feel like it's really important that we highlight how this is going to be calculated. So as in the last round of funding, there's a flat rate kind of guaranteed amount that's calculated based on the rate of $200 per application. That amount is to be split out monthly so that you have a guaranteed monthly amount that is incoming to your organization. In addition to that, an additional $100 will be paid for each eligible and verified application submitted during the reporting month up to the total contracted number of applications for the term. That $100 additional for each application is to be included on the reimbursement requests as a separate line item. And in order to be considered as a valid confirmed submitted application, it must be submitted to KCR during the contract period, and it must be a new applicant. It's not somebody who has already applied with a different organization or directly to KCR, Perimeter Housing Authority, or Housing Kitsap. The awards for application assistance will be based on, for prior recipients of this funding, on previous contract performance data in the same way that we did for the first round of TRAP 2.0. And for new recipients, it will be a proposed number as outlined in the RFP. Next slide, please. In order to access the application, the link is posted here. It's kcowa.us/KEPA-partner. The application is two-part in this round. It is a cognito form similar to what was performed previously, and we've added an Excel budget worksheet to simplify the breakdown of the information that's being requested from our organizations. All of the requested organizational information is required. The deadline for first round priority proposals is 4 p.m. on June 3rd. That's a Friday. I do encourage that people actually be prepared to submit a little bit sooner because this is an electronic submission. There is always the risk of technical challenges and difficulties that may arise, internet going down, that sort of thing. So if you'd like to ensure that your application is submitted for priority consideration, I would encourage that you do so prior to 4 p.m. on June 3rd. We will continue to accept proposals on a rolling basis up until August 1st to be considered if additional funding is available. However, it's important to note that contracts that result from late submission of proposals will not be backdated. Next slide, please. Next, we're going to take a look at the application itself. And so this is the information that will be requested when you click on that link and you're submitting the cognito form. We need the organization's legal name, the name of the executive director or officer. This is the person who is authorized to sign the contract. Having this information accurate is incredibly important because if there is a discrepancy and you need that name changed, it does require that things go back through the county process, which can take time. If you'd like another person to be listed as the contact person, perhaps you have a manager or somebody else that we should primarily have our contact with, please list their information here. And we need valid contact information, a phone number and email address. Next slide, please. Other information that's required from the organization is the mailing address and or physical address. If the physical address is different than the mailing address, we will need that noted here. We will need the organization's EIN, a upload of the W-9 request as indicated, and the organization's UEI number. The UEI is a fairly new requirement from the federal government. And so if you don't already have one of these, I would highly encourage that you start that process now. There's also a question about liability insurance. This is a basic requirement for contracting with the county. And here is a place that you can upload a copy of your liability insurance. Next slide, please. One question that was added is how you prefer to receive reimbursements. With that, there's a little click down that you can set. You can opt for either mail or direct deposit. If you do opt for direct deposit and have not already filled out a form to receive direct deposits from the county, we will need to make sure that you get a copy of that form and get that submitted. Next, we have the organization's mission statement. This is a question geared towards what does your organization do to accomplish the mission? What population does your organization serve? What is the driving core and heart of your organization? That's the type of information we want in your mission statement. Then there's a question about the population that you serve that will receive the outreach. We are trying with this funding to reach as many populations as we possibly can to ensure that we are reaching a diverse group of people. So please make sure that you're very specific in which populations you serve. Then there's a question about risk assessments. Folks who have contracted with us in the past are very familiar with this process. If you have submitted a risk assessment in the last 12 months, please indicate that here. As long as a risk assessment has been completed in the previous 12 months with no outstanding findings, this risk assessment process may be waived. Next slide, please. The next section on the application regards buy-in for organization eligibility. And so this section is really looking at, does your organization meet the requirements as outlined by Commerce? Are you operated by and for the community that you serve? Is the organization's primary mission and history serving the specific community that they're operated by? Is it culturally based, directed, and substantially controlled by individuals from the community? And does it embody the community's central cultural values? Next slide. Here we have outlined the two different types of activities that are eligible under this contract: outreach and education and application assistance. This funding opportunity gives you the opportunity to select one or both of these options, and this is the portion where you would click. Next slide, please. Here's an example of what you will see on your screen if you select the outreach and education portion. As you can see here, there's a description, a definition, and then the maximum award amount is noted. It's very important that you select here all activities which apply. As you can see below audio, video, advertising at the bottom of this list, there is a section for other. So if there is an activity that you intend to perform that is not included in this list, make sure that you note that here so that it can be included in your proposal. Next slide, please. Summary of outreach activities. This section is going to be incredibly important. We need to be able to see that there is a demonstrated ability and a plan to provide outreach and education to your target communities. We need to know how many households you anticipate you're going to reach through the activities. There needs to be a breakdown of staff. We need to know how many staff are you going to have working on this? How many hours are those staff going to be investing? Really being specific about the use of the funds that you're receiving. Again, with the summary, again, detail is going to be key. Having a very detailed application and proposal is going to benefit you a lot in the scoring process. Here you're going to want to specify the types of outreach activities that you're intending to perform, the methods of outreach, who is going to perform the outreach, what households are going to benefit from the outreach, and how you expect those methods will lead to people learning about and applying for assistance. Next slide, please. So the second part of the outreach and education application is the budget. Proposals need to identify the total costs, fees, and charges and provide a budget which shows how proposed costs are allocated by task, including estimates of staff time if applicable. As you can see in the second bullet point, there is a budget worksheet that you can download. This is an Excel sheet. We worked to make this as user-friendly as possible. And hopefully it will help you to be able to really flesh out a detailed budget without having to create something from scratch. So when you click on that download budget spreadsheet worksheet, this Excel will pop up. Next slide, please. So this is what the Excel budget looks like. We'll start with kind of looking at the hosting event section, and this is to give you a sense of the level of detail that we are needing to receive for a proposal to be considered complete. So if you're planning on hosting events, we need to know the estimated staff hours, if applicable, the estimated cost of those staff hours, and a description of the events. Same with printing expenses. Then on the far right side here, we need to get some information about the number of events, maybe the names or dates. Thank you, Corey. And the number of anticipated attendees. As you input these amounts, your subtotal will auto-populate at the bottom here. If there are any other expenses associated with hosting event that you anticipate, please ensure that you include those here so that they can be considered in your proposal. Next slide, please. Likewise, for distribution of information at existing events and venues, maybe there's a community event that you plan to host a table at, and you want to distribute some materials about the KEPA program to attendees. This is the section that you would use for those budget items. Again, we have staffing expenses, printing expenses, and if there are any other event expenses, perhaps you have to pay a tabling fee, and so you can include that in this process. Again, on the far right, we need to list the number of events and the locations, events, or venues below. Next slide, please. Following the same line, we have our social media campaigns. Here, we'd like you to go ahead and check off if it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or another platform that you plan on using for social media, the number of posts you intend to make, and the URL address for your organization's media pages. In the section below, there is an additional, just like the other ones, you need to list out the staffing expenses, cost of promotional boosts, and any other social media expenses. Next slide, please. Similarly, audio, video advertising. And so really the thing that I want to drive home here is that there's a level of detail required in these proposals that wasn't necessarily required in previous proposals for all of the reasons that we discussed earlier. So same with audio video advertising, listing the total number of audio video ads that you're producing and what your platform and location is. Where can we find those if we want to direct somebody to them? Making sure that you're indicating any necessary staffing expenses and any other advertising expenses that were not included. Next slide, please. This is the section that you will use if there are activities that you've put in your check mark as other that are not covered in the sections above. If you use this other category, make sure that you change this heading so that we know exactly what these expenses are attributable to. Again, we have staffing expenses, printing expenses, electronic distribution, and any other expenses that you anticipate related to the outreach and education activity that is specified in the green section above. Then on the side to the right, we need a quantifiable, that's a countable output of the other outreach activity and an estimated number of households reached, and then a detailed description of the activity itself. Down at the bottom in the blue purple kind of color, you'll have your total outreach and education budget, which will auto-populate. This is not to exceed $20,000. Next slide, please. Next is the application assistance section of the proposal. So back to that first screen, when you select the activities that you'd like to contract for, if you've clicked the application assistance button, this is what will pop up. There's going to be a drop-down menu asking, has your organization previously received KEPA-related funds for application assistance? So this is going to be a yes or no question. If you have previously received KEPA-related funds, you're going to click yes, and this is the message that you will receive. Award amounts for organizations which have previously received KEPA funds for application assistance activities shall be based on previous contract performance. Previous contract performance data may be requested from the county. Please see the RFP for additional details. Next slide, please. If you select no to this, if you have not received any application assistance for KEPA related funds in the past, then we ask that the organization indicate a target number of KEPA applications that they anticipate in using, assisting tenants with, and turning in to KCR between July 1st and December 31st. It outlines that a multiplier of $200 per application is used to determine the maximum grant amount and what that fund covers. The maximum target number of applications for the proposal is 300, but we will also be reviewing the numbers to ensure that they are reasonable and achievable given the work done by the organization. So they will enter the target number of applications here, and the application assistant budget total will auto-calculate. Next slide, please. Okay, audio's back. So next, you're just going to submit and save the application. This gives some basic information about the application and award process. It directly mirrors what is listed in the RFP. There's nothing new here. For information and questions, my contact information is listed. And if you have cognito technical assistance, if you're having problems with a field on the form itself, you can reach out to Corey. His contact information is listed below. Next slide, please. So evaluation of applications, this is an area that we received a lot of questions about in the past. Because the funding previously needed to get out so quickly, it was a little unstructured as to the process, and the process wasn't clearly demonstrated and explained to people submitting proposals and organizations submitting proposals. So what we're attempting to do and aiming to do with this section is to make it incredibly clear to everybody who is applying, just as you would see in a normal procurement process, how the scoring actually occurs. There's a panel of county staff who will review the proposals the week following the submission, and there's a scoring process. The details of the scoring is outlined in the RFP, but we'll touch on this briefly today as well. The scoring is going to be used to determine which applications receive a higher percentage of their requested funding. The proposals will be reviewed and evaluated based on the written information and attachments provided by the applicants. Again, this is where we urge you to be very detailed in your proposal. Next slide, please. These are the three categories that will be used in the evaluation of the applications. One is project soundness. Does the application demonstrate that the project has sufficient planning, staffing, and performance measurement to effectively and efficiently perform the work proposed? For example, if somebody submits to us that they're going to host 200 events in a 6-month period, and they have a staff of 3, that's going to be a very difficult thing for them to do. Section 2, community benefit, because that's really why we're in it, right? This is why we're doing the work that we're doing. Does the application demonstrate that the proposed activities will benefit the community and contribute to the goal of eviction prevention by maximizing reach and/or access to and support with the application process? And section 3, financial feasibility. Does the information in the application demonstrate that the project and program has the financial planning and resources to be carried out as described in the application? Are the proposed costs eligible, reasonable, and clearly defined? Another example of one that would probably score low for this would be if we had an organization apply who is going to host one event. They're expecting 10 people to attend and they're requesting $20,000 for this event, right? And so making sure that the proposed costs are reasonable, they're eligible costs, and that they're very clearly defined in the application. Next slide, please. After applications are received, there will be the review period from the panel of county staff. Award notification will go out via email to the email contact information that you've submitted on your proposal. The contract term will be July 1st through December 31st. And if you need any further support, we are always available. Technical assistance with the Cognito form, as mentioned, would go to Corey. He's our division specialist. And questions about the RFP and the opportunity itself could come to me. I'm the grants program analyst. Next slide, please. Okay, at this point, we're going to go ahead and open it up to any questions if you have any. I think it's going to take just a moment to get the settings adjusted so that folks can.
So I've now changed some settings. You should be able to put questions in the chat box, or if you would like, you can unmute yourself and ask questions now.
I see a question there from North Kitsap Fish Line. Hello. Can we apply for both outreach and application assistance, or is it one or another? It is both. Both are possible. I'm not seeing any other questions in chat. Follow up, is it 2 applications or do we do that in 1 application? That is all on 1 application. And so when you have that drop down of activities, you can actually select both. You don't have to select just one or the other. You can select both and both systems will pop up for you. You're welcome.
I'll also note on the Cognito form, when you are starting an application, at the bottom of the form, there is a submit and there is a save button. If you can prepare your materials in advance before you begin an application, or if you want to work on it kind of piecemeal, working through fields one at a time on the application, you can start working on the Cognito form, and then at the bottom of the form, you can hit the save button, and it will email you a link to the contact person or to the director email that is listed on your application. That email link will allow you to later come back and restore your session so that you can continue completing your application online. Once you have submitted, you can come back and make changes up until the cutoff time on June 3rd for that application process. At that time, all applications will be locked and you will not be able to make any further changes to your application for this RFP.
Thank you, Corey. I see a hand up from Deborah Moore Jackson.
Yes, my question was, let me take this mask off. My question is, if you have your UEI number pending and waiting to hear back, because we've been waiting for quite some time to receive our UEI number.
That's a really good question. That is something that we will look into on our end and we'll get back to you on.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Just for clarification that for our UEI number, this is Diana from Foundation for Homeless and Poverty Management. They are on a backlog. They are behind at least 2 weeks. I spoke with them today, and they were saying that we should just inform you all that they are behind. They are processing it as they receive it. So you have about a 2 to 3 week backlog right now.
Thank you, Diana. That's very helpful information. We will definitely explore if we can make that optional at this time. And just knowing that by the time a contract is in place, that it will be a requirement. So we'll see if we can change that on the form itself. I see a hand up from Deborah Moore Jackson.
No, my question was, you answered it, and so did Miss Diane.
Okay, perfect. I
Yeah,
saw
it
the
was
little
the-
hands up icon. I wanted to ensure that we got your question.
Okay, thank you. No, you did.
I'll take this opportunity to add some additional detail about the budget form. That is new on this RFP process. It's is set up to kind of reflect some of the information that we collect from our other grants, for example, shelters and homeless service programs. The budget form is locked down so that you're only able to edit certain parts of the form. So in fields that are highlighted in kind of an orange color, those are input fields. So that is where you can enter information. If you, for example, put in a budget saying that you'll spend $20 on printing, other fields that are conditionally required will also be highlighted. So if you put in an amount for an expense, you'll need to describe that expense. And in addition to describing the expense that you have listed, you'll also have to complete the section of the form regarding outputs for that outreach activity. For example, if you're doing printing, the output related to that would you'd want to mention what the printing is for, events, venues, for example, and how many people you expect that to reach. So the form kind of combines a budget and a description of how that budget supports your outreach activities.
I'm not seeing any more questions in chat. Does anybody have any final questions for us before we wrap up? Okay, well, if anything comes to you at a later point, do not hesitate to reach out. Corey and I are both available to support you in any way that we can as you navigate this process. There have been quite a few changes, and it's going to be natural that questions are going to come up. So please reach out to us at any point.